something just happened inside the British royal family, and almost nobody caught it. Not because it was hidden, but because it was too subtle for headlines. No scandal, no shouting, no dramatic interview, just a brooch, a missing seat, and a man the world stopped paying attention to years ago quietly stepping into power. And by the time you finish this, you're going to realize Prince Edward may be playing a much smarter game than anyone thought. Stay with me, because this isn't about titles, it's about timing. For most of his life, Prince Edward was basically background noise, no scandals, no explosive interviews, no tell-all book deals. Even while Prince Andrew was setting his reputation on fire, while Prince Harry was dropping emotional grenades from California, and while King Charles was spending decades slowly climbing toward the throne, Edward, he just kept showing up, quietly, consistently, almost invisibly, and for years that made him easy to ignore. But here's the thing, people always underestimate. The quiet ones are usually the ones still standing when everything else falls apart. Because now, that same invisible prince has just been handed one of the most symbolically powerful titles in the entire monarchy. Duke of Edinburgh, the title once held by Prince Philip himself. Not just a title, a legacy. And King Charles didn't give that away casually. But here's where it gets interesting. At first glance, Edward still looks irrelevant. Yet he's 15th in line to the throne, not even close. But if you think royal power is about numbers on a list, you're already missing what's actually happening. Because inside that palace, influence doesn't follow the line of succession. It follows behavior. And Edward's behavior over the past 2 years has changed completely. While everyone else was distracted by scandals, health scares, and royal drama, Edward and Sophie were quietly expanding their influence. More appearances, more international trips, more responsibility. No noise, just results. And when King Charles stepped back after his cancer diagnosis, Edward didn't hesitate. He stepped forward. No announcement, no fanfare. Just filled the gap. Now, here's the part that should have raised eyebrows. And they did more work than ever, and got nothing in return. No major recognition, no spotlight moment, no public reward. In fact, during a major honors list that celebrated other senior royals, Edward and Sophie were completely left out. Now think about that for a second. You do more, you get less, and you say, nothing? Yeah, that's not weakness, that's strategy. Because while all of that was happening quietly behind the scenes, the public started noticing something else. The numbers, and numbers don't lie, at least not for long. Edward and Sophie? Over 50% approval, low negative ratings, steady, quiet, reliable. Meanwhile, Queen Camilla's approval has dropped, to the point where more people view her negatively than positively. Let that sink in, because in a monarchy, public perception is power. And right now, there's a shift happening, not loud, but very real. But this story doesn't really start with approval ratings. It starts with something much smaller, a brooch. Yeah, a brooch. Sounds harmless, right? Not in royal circles. Because in that world, jewelry isn't fashion, it's messaging. Carefully chosen, carefully placed, never accidental. So when Camilla appeared wearing a brooch shaped like the Tudor crown, covered in jewels tied directly to King Charles, that wasn't decoration, that was a statement. I am the queen. This is my place. Clear, direct, intentional, but Edward and Sophie didn't respond with a bigger statement. They didn't compete. They didn't react. They did something far more dangerous. They stayed quiet and kept moving. And in royal strategy, silence isn't absence. It's control. Now let's talk about the moment that made insiders really start paying attention. Easter 2026. On the surface, just another royal event, but if you've been watching closely, it's that. It was anything but normal, because this wasn't about who showed up. It was about where they stood. Catherine returned. William was there. The children were there. The future of the monarchy? Standing right in front of everyone. Strong, united, recovered, message received. But then there was Edward, not orbiting around Camilla, not blending into the background. He was positioned near William, near the future, not the present. And in royal language, that's not random, that's alignment. And then there's Sophie, not there. Officially unwell. Maybe, maybe not. Must because in royal life, absence is never just absence. It's timing, it's positioning, it's choice. And when you start seeing the same patterns repeat at Easter, at Commonwealth events, around key appearances, you realize something bigger is happening. Edward and Sophie aren't stepping back. They're stepping towards something else, toward William's future reign. Now here's where it gets even more interesting, because while all this quiet repositioning is happening, there's chaos in the background. Prince Andrew, scandal, disgrace, removal from royal life, relocated, pushed out. And while King Charles kept his distance, guess who stepped in? Edward. Quietly, no cameras, no statements, no drama. He went directly to Andrew, not to defend him, not to comfort him, but to tell him, essentially, stop making this worse. Think about that. That's not a forgotten prince. That's someone trusted to handle problems no one else wants to touch. That's internal authority, the kind you don't announce, but everyone inside the system understands. And while all of this is happening, Edward keeps building something that can't be taken away. International presence, diplomatic credibility, consistent service, no controversy, no noise, just stability. And when the monarchy eventually transitions to William, the people standing closest to him won't be the loudest ones. They'll be the ones who proved they could be trusted when things were unstable. So no, there's no dramatic showdown here. No leaked messages. No explosive interviews. What's happening is something far more powerful. A slow, precise, almost invisible shift. Communicated through positioning, timing, absence, and silence. Prince Edward spent decades being overlooked, and it turns out that may have been his greatest advantage. Because while everyone else was fighting for attention, he was learning how power actually works inside that institution. And now, he might be closer to the center of it than anyone realizes. So here's the real question. Did the media completely miss this? Or did they see it and not understand what they were looking at? Let me know what you think. Because this is one of those stories where the real conversation happens in the comments. And if you're starting to see the monarchy differently after this, stick around, because the next one gets even deeper into who's really shaping William's future and who's quietly being pushed out of it.